Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special holiday episode of Relating to DevSecOps, where we explore the development, security, and operational issues of today so that we can solve real-world problems with people that face them. I'm your host, Ken Toller, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Michael McCabe. Happy holidays, Mike. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Happy holidays to you. Looking forward to being the real holidays and, getting away from work for a little bit.
I know, we're almost there. We're recording a little bit earlier, so everyone's still working now, but looking forward to that last week into the new year. Any New Year's resolutions for you? Security or non-security related?
Sleep more, probably.
Sleep more?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
going to go ahead and, dream more.
Yeah.
Look at that.
There you go. Nice
Dream more.
Yes, that's good. Sleep more, dream more.
Because you can dream and not sleep, but also you can sleep and dream. How about that?
We're off to a strong start.
Yeah. Dream more, folks. Dream more. Well, I think we have a pretty interesting episode coming for you today. We'll see how it goes. In the spirit of the holidays, we are going to do a Ghosts of DevSecOps Past, Present, and Future themed episode. This is our first themed episode. I think we missed a lot of opportunities here through Halloween and New Year's. So we're doing more than resolutions here. We're full on ghosts. Ghost in the shell. Got anime references. We're killing it today.
Throwing everything out there.
That's right. So look, I think I thought this would be interesting because we do a retrospective every year. We talk about things that we've seen through the year, and I like this idea. Not to toot the horn of your hosts, but because I think it's going to force us to think about, how do we look at the past of DevSecOps? How do we look at it as we've gone through this year? And what are we excited about or nervous about as we get into the future? So because I did the intro, Mike, I'm going to kick it over to you and say, let's start with the past. What is the ghost of Christmas DevSecOps past for you?
I don't even know how to answer that question well, but what comes to mind for me, because the ghost of Christmas past is kind of a bad thing, right? But this is going to be a good thing, I think. This is going to be a positive thing. Because we were talking before this, what have we noticed in the past? What are we seeing kind of improve? What's kind of the same? What's getting better? All those kinds of things. I think mine is there's more security awareness. I think if you walked into like any cloud engineering or app development company or team in any company, no one's going to be like, yeah, security doesn't matter. Okay, that's not true. There's probably a handful of places where they probably would say that, but it's not the norm anymore. So I think that's my reflection over the past couple of years, I think, really. This year, but definitely in the past couple of years, just noticing that even if no one is perfect, no one is, doing everything we wish they were doing, people are definitely much more aware. No one can say they're ignorant that security is important, that they need to do more, or that, there are real threats out there that are going after them as well. So it's a positive ghost. It's a friendly ghost.
Yeah, it's the Casper. It's your Casper.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So can you expand on that a little bit? Like, do you have an anecdote or anything that you're thinking of particularly?
I think the more conversations, we have with, and I think this is especially true in the cloud engineering side, like when we work with different companies, sometimes there's kind of a marked difference between the application developers and the cloud developers, as in the people who maintain the infrastructure. I feel like those folks are very security aware. They're very keeping this infrastructure is definitely part of my day-to-day job. I think on the application engineering side, there's a lot more awareness. People slight OWASP, but I feel like OWASP has done a huge amount of good to just create awareness of, even if the top 10 is not perfect, it's still a pretty solid top 10 of things to think about at least. Better than nothing. So I think there's a lot more awareness and just knowledge about security. I think most people most non-security folks in engineering are pretty familiar with security issues. They hear about breaches that happen. They know there's nation states out there. They know there's monetarily, motivated people who are going after them as well. So I think there's just much more awareness. I think we've been in the industry long enough that we've had conversations with people who are just completely ignorant of security and just never either thought it just wasn't their job or just wasn't a real thing. And I think I think that really has changed, which is a good step one, for sure.
Yeah. I think I'm somewhat related on the past. You started to talk about how things are changing or how you've seen things change. So maybe we'll move into the present there soon. But I agree. I think that and I don't know that it's so optimistic for me in the past, like looking in the past and thinking about it in the same way. Like I just know that security teams and development teams, and one of the things that we've battled, and one of the things that we certainly poke fun at for, relating to DevSecOps, is that there have been these silos of security and engineering. And so security was doing the security work and basically tasking engineering, and it caused a lot of bad blood because, results weren't clean, or the security team didn't provide enough information. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that there were a lot of sort of skill silos. There was your infrastructure security, your cloud security, your IT security, your application security. And then within those different silos of security talent, you also had varying degrees of how well someone did in this particular role. There was also this mindset of, the security gate that were blocking builds. So like in the early days of DevSecOps and shift left, a lot of it was like, well, if we're moving it left, we just take this big thing, the SAST scan, and we're going to make it happen earlier in the process. But it caused a lot of churn and a lot of blockage and delayed builds. And I think, that mindset has progressed. And the reason that we change all this terminology, we go through all these buzzwords, is because there is a simplification of the idea. And, I think that the present idea, which hopefully we'll get into, is a little bit more of a healthy way to look at it. So I think that in the past, we were thinking more of like, as an industry, I don't think on this podcast, but as an industry, I think we thought more of moving things earlier in the process, but didn't really conceptualize well how to do that in a good way, in a iterative way, in a way that makes sense for engineers. And I also think that the different skill sets that we had for app and cloud and IT and all that were much more separate than they are today, because with the advent of everything as code, I think it's making a lot of these a bit more cohesive when we think about concepts of security. I don't think it's perfect yet, for sure, but I think that we're moving in that direction.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. And I think security is, we talked about, I know everyone doesn't like the term shift left, but less shift left and more just integrating into processes, and instead of being like the outside in, forcing you to change your process, just be part of the actual engineering process. I think last episode we talked about this quite a bit, but there's definitely more of that. There's been that mindset shift where it's awareness on the developer side, it's security people coming around to, hey, I can't just yell at people to get stuff done. I actually have to work within their systems, their frameworks, and sometimes their timelines too. So I agree with you.
Yeah. I think that as we move into the ghost of DevSecOps present, that one of the things I will highlight is that there are still some organizations and people that are stuck with the ghost of the past. And so I think some of those themes carry into the present, but as an organization, I think we're moving in the right direction. So with that, I think, it sounds like silos and awareness and a lot of the culture challenges were the things that we had in the past. So moving into the present, do you think that has changed dramatically? And if so, how? And then what are the problems of the present that you see, even though we've made these strides from the past?
Yeah, I think my list is going to be all contradictory, so enjoy that. But no, I think the funny thing is, step one is awareness. Step two is actually doing something about it. And I feel like we still see companies struggle with kind of the basics. And I mean like basics. I don't mean advanced persistent threat prevention. I mean like MFA on everything, password policies on things, like just following the most basic best practices for app and cloud security. So I think there's still a gap between, there's the awareness that I should be doing these things, and there's the actual doing them. So I feel like I said, it's step one. People are more aware. People know, oh yeah, I should have MFA, I should have password policies, I should have good logs enabled, like I should have all these things. There's still kind of a gap with people actually doing it. So I think, that's part of our job, I guess, as security folks, is to drive awareness and then really drive home the point that like these things should be done. People often learn these lessons when it's too late, unfortunately, and that's not the way you really want to make change happen. But that is definitely ways that I've seen people, get these changes to actually happen, is a breach, an incident, data loss, something like that. So it's a little bit of not an oxymoron, but a little contradictory. People are aware, but they're still not quite doing the basics of security, I think, unfortunately. And then so much of security is just the basics.
Yeah. What is the biggest basic you feel is missed present day?
I spent a lot of time in the cloud space, so I think authentication and authorization are probably the two biggest areas that I still see people struggling. We do, cloud security assessments, and like it's always, this pipeline has admin access tied to it, and there's, the credentials are stored on some Jenkins server, and there's no conditionals on it. So anyone who accidentally commits, a Jenkins file or some kind of repo to GitHub public, or their laptop gets hacked, something like that, is going to expose those credentials. Those credentials are going to have admin access. That attacker is going to have free reign to do whatever they want. So I think the basic stuff, that it's not maybe the easiest thing, but it's still pretty easy to do. I think people aren't very consistent about, and even things like blocking S3 public access in AWS, like 3 clicks and you're basically good to go, but people just don't seem to go through those steps as much. So there's still kind of a gap, and this is where compliance and security teams come in to help kind of fill that gap. But I think if you just left dev teams with their awareness, they still need a little help to actually make those basic changes and put them in place. So
you bring up some interesting things that I've seen too. Like the public access is something that I see all the time as well, for S3 buckets. And I think what's interesting to me is it's sort of a double-edged sword for me here, is that I see that engineers and developers are getting more permissions to do more things because they're responsible for more, right? Like where you might have had a DevOps team, an engineering team, software development, and a QA team. So, especially in some of these smaller teams, they're doing a lot of this work themselves. So they're deploying their own applications, they're doing their own DevOps, they're doing their own QA, and there's very little separation between those teams. And in those cases, I think the good thing is that I have seen an increase in the present of awareness of security constraints, but there's almost there's an authority that engineers have today where they will make the security decision and not involve the security team, because security is everyone's responsibility. So I don't know, I feel like we're moving in the right direction, as in people are taking more responsibility for security and thinking about security, but they're still coming to the wrong conclusions because of a lack of training or a lack of awareness of all of the security things. So I think there's still a place for people that specialize in security, even if this is going to be a contradictory statement as well. Even if that specialization is like being a security generalist versus being an engineer with a general idea of security. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I think that there's it's fine to make security everyone's responsibility, but you also can't, just like you can't expect the security generalist to have a specialization in everything, and they're not going to know everything. You sure can't expect an engineer to know everything about security that a security generalist knows, and also know everything that a security specialist will know, right? So I still think you need these roles, because you can't expect responsibility of security to mean that they know everything about security. So I appreciate this move to accountability and ownership, but there's still a collaboration component I think that is missing in the present, that I feel like there's a bit of tension there because of that enablement. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it covered like a few things. There's the awareness perspective, which is most developers aren't going to spend all their free time learning about security issues and like how hacks happen and new techniques and new vulnerabilities in software and all that kind of stuff, new ways that attackers manipulate people to get access to things. Like they're not going to spend all. There's some people who are definitely interested in that, who are professional developers, but I'd say most are more interested in building stuff and creating solutions and super passionate about Jira tickets, obviously. So they're more focused on that. You didn't even pick up on my sarcasm that time, but you just pieced out for the holiday. But
no, man, it was too dry for me.
So we got to record more. But they're never going to be that aware, even if they are somewhat more aware. But even if they are aware, their brain, I don't think that their brain is in that space all the time. Like, say what you will about security people, we're weird, we're paranoid, we think about how to break stuff a lot, and we're either born that way or trained up or something. Childhood trauma, probably. That's what 90% of it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever it is, we're just in that space all the time about how something can go wrong. So yeah, I mean, to your point, even with more awareness, which is really good, you're always going to need someone to be like, well, what if? And I feel like that's kind of the role of security folks. I
think, I mean, I do think that we talked a little bit about it in one of our previous episodes around what is someone incentivized to do, what are they excited about doing, and so you gravitate towards the things that you want to do or are compensated or incentivized to do rather than the things that you maybe should do. And so security folks are, tasked with doing security things, and engineers are ultimately tasked with doing engineering things. So you will have security teams that develop code, but that code is probably not going to be as enterprise ready as a career developer, and vice versa. I think that we have different roles for different reasons. It's the same reason that network security engineers aren't all AppSec engineers, and AppSec engineers aren't all network engineers or network security engineers. So I think that there's definitely a focus area, and I think that in most industries, you understand that there are roles folks play because of that incentive model or that desire model. And for whatever reason, I think that there's a misconception of what it means for security to be everyone's responsibility. It doesn't mean that security has to be everyone's specialty. Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to bring up you have something else to say there?
I was just thinking, companies always say security is everyone's responsibility, and I think I was just thinking about it when you were talking, which is like companies say if you're a developer, not getting breached is your responsibility, right? Like, yes, losing data, losing credentials, whatever it is, not letting the system go down. That is everyone's responsibility. But what companies don't actually enable developers to do is the things that prevent those things from happening. Like, that's not part of their day-to-day job, unfortunately. Like fixing all the security bugs, that's not part of their sprint. That's not part of their quarterly planning. So it's like companies talk a big game of like security is everyone's responsibility, but the actual things that change that day to day are not really everyone's responsibility. They're we're as security folks scream into the void to try to get these things changed because we're trying to fight between the different priorities. And I'm not like trying to make a anti-capitalist point of like we talked about this before, businesses have to make money, but everyone's competing on different priorities, and it's just understandable that, like you said, the incentives for developers are to help the company make more money, new features, new whatever it is.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anyway, just wanted to reiterate on that as you were talking.
No, totally agree. I know we're into the present, but I do want to make sure that I wanted to call out one thing, because it's something that I've seen this whole year that I think it'd be good to call out, and that is what are our favorite buzzwords for the year? What are the security buzzwords for the year? And I feel like early in the year, SBOM, SCA, bill of materials. So SBOM, for those who are tuning in and don't know what it is, software bill of materials. SCA, so what is it? Security composition analysis or source composition analysis, something along those lines. Very similar. Looking at libraries and what makes up your software. I think, and then as we got through the year, AI and LLMs and all these, this hype cycle. I am consistently annoyed at how laser focused we get on these large classes of things, not because they're bad to focus on, but because of just how many vendors push these things and hop on it. And I know that it's just like you said, it's revenue driven. It's like you got to sell something. So it's like if you're not talking about AI, or you're not talking about SBOM, you're not talking about SCA, you're missing the current hype cycle of where people are going to spend money, because that's what everyone hears about and that's what's in the news and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I still think that all of these things have been part of security. And I think you were talking about fundamentals. I think that it's fundamentals with consistency in the same way of these things should already be a part of the program that you're putting together. Just because a vendor is now selling the latest buzzword, or you're listening to relating to DevSecOps, it shouldn't be the thing that you necessarily focus on, right? It's all of these things are part of it. And I think that we still face that challenge of getting too attached to one element of security and over-rotating for an entire year on one area.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. People, are they more likely to get hacked through their LLM, or are they more likely to get hacked through the things we've been talking about for 10 plus years that are still an issue?
Yeah. And the other thing is SBOM and SCA, those were we made good strides there because it was part of its own security hype cycle. And so what now, we're not investing in it anymore. So, now we're on to the AI thing. And so these areas get less attention. And it's just, to me, it just means that folks that didn't get there this year are now going to have missed the boat on good tools to a degree, or maybe they weren't good tools, or, you think about it as a function or in a capability as opposed to a tool because someone's selling it to you. So I think we're going to face that problem continually. I think that's always going to be a thing that we're annoyed about, but certainly part of the present.
Yep.
Are you ready for the DevSecOps ghost of Christmas, DevSecOps Christmas future?
Yeah, I have a very dorky one, but
All right.
I have my passions, so
Let's do it.
I think mine is, and it sort of dovetails with the other things, is how we're systemizing and codifying security. So it's kind of the invisible effort that's going on behind the scenes so that people don't need to think about it as much. Okay, what I mean by that, there's been a bunch of kind of policy-based work. You and me have done a lot of policy-based security, which is not like us walking around with clipboards and printouts of 300-page policies and talking about subsections of the password policy, but actually taking security requirements and turning it into policy as code, which then automatically enforces these things. Because I feel like we've been talking about, we've been trying to make developers aware, then trying to make developers, try to enable them to actually do the things we want them to do. If we just make them aware, but give them the tools and the environment that does most of it for them, so they don't have to think about it. Maybe they know why something is done a certain way. easiest example, like a Terraform definition where the S3 bucket is not public, things like that, or is named well, or is using a KMS key, something like that. I think that is, I think that is an area of opportunity that I've seen a lot more of. It's definitely in pockets. It's not like every company out there, every startup out there is like, yeah, we've completely codified all of our security and no one has to think about it ever. But I do feel like there's more and more tooling out there for it. There's more integration points for it. And the more we can make security somewhat invisible to folks and just like part of the process, I feel like we're going to make so many more strides than trying to, scream it from the mountaintops to say, hey, do this or do that. Because I think it kind of goes back with my first 2 points. People are aware. Doesn't mean they're always doing the things they need to be doing for various reasons. So
yeah,
I think that's what I'm hopeful for. It's going to take time, but I do feel like we're getting to a point where that's like a programmatic approach to security is definitely taking hold in a lot of areas. Again, my head's in the cloud space where that's even more true with like policies built into into cloud providers like SCPs and AWS service control policies, now the resource control policies, like all that stuff is working at a higher level versus being like, hey, developer, please don't type true when it says public access.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very dorky thing to be excited about, and I've been beating this drum for a couple of years, but I am hopeful that we'll be able to just pre-remediate in like what was that Tom Cruise movie, the pre-crime unit? We're going to be the pre-crime
Minority
unit for
Report?
security. Yeah, exactly.
The precogs?
Yes, exactly. That's what we're going to become. We'll pre-remediate the security issues. So,
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think what dovetails to that is I'm seeing more security professionals and even folks just getting into security having like more knowledge or coding chops, development chops, even, like early folks out of college or whatever. I think that more people have development chops than I've seen in the past. And I think that aligns pretty well with what you're observing too, where you have more security as code in some way, or you're touching more code no matter what discipline you're in, whether that's in IT or not. So folks are more skilled when it comes to code. I remember, and we talked about this in a previous episode as well, where we debated whether or not a security engineer needed to know how to code. If they were like a network security engineer or something. And I think that it helps everyone now because of how much we've gone to cloud and app and infrastructure as code. And so there's some programming language that will benefit you, and no matter where, like what security discipline you're in. So that's exciting to me to see that growth in the industry and to have more capable folks, because I think that lends itself to all the things we're trying to do, right? We're trying to automate more. We're trying to ensure that we are more of a contributor to the code bases, that we can apply remediations, that we can actually do more in the engineering space, just like we're asking engineers to take on more responsibility. So I think that collaboration is healthy. I think it brings humans closer together through common skill sets, and that lends itself to what we've been trying to do with DevSecOps, or whatever you want to call it now, product security, in the future. And I think that what sort of both scares me and excites me is, and we have to talk about it, how AI and LLMs and all of this are going to contribute to that. And I think it's going to happen in both a negative and a positive way. I think it's going to make people feel less restricted about doing things. And I think that it's going to make people less restricted in doing things, which is going to cause problems.
Yeah.
So we are going to see the bad LLM code. We are going to see the advanced Stack Overflow copy and paste. It's going to lend itself to more vulnerabilities and issues. There's going to be less polish to a lot of this. And that's scary. I don't know where that's going to go. I think that, this is the next iteration of like I think 2025 is going to be all about AI and automation and scripting and using AI in products, and we're going to argue and debate about it, and it's going to be a whole nother thing, and we're going to continue to do that, and that I think is exciting and horrifying. Yeah, where are you on that? Where are you on the AI train, Mike? We've talked about it in 3 episodes, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think our first episode we talked about AI. We're like, it's not our savior and it's not the worst thing ever. It's somewhere in the middle. Like it is a tool, but I think to your point, like it's a tool that's going to, and I'm reading like Twitter and things like that. You see people like, oh, I built a startup over the weekend. I used Cursor, I used Claude, and I built my startup over the weekend. I have a new SaaS. And like it's awesome how fast people can build with AI tools, and it's good that it's almost like democratized coding, because a lot of people just thought coding was incredibly hard, and it can be, but there's a lot of approachable ways to do it. So it's good in the sense that anyone can pick up ChatGPT and start building stuff. That's very cool. On the flip side, there's nothing that says that the code out of any of these tools is going to be good. So I feel like for security folks, the velocity is much higher, the volume is much higher. That doesn't mean the security is going to be much higher. Like, it's not like the data sources for all these LLMs were perfect source code. Pretty sure Stack Overflow's in there. So we're just dealing with Stack Overflow times 10 in terms of velocity and volume. So there's going to be a lot of new people in the coding space, which will be good. There'll be a lot of interesting solutions, new companies, startups that have come out of it. But yeah, it's going to be, I feel like there's going to be a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited for that work. I think the future is certainly healthy for security work. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity that's going to come out of all of this. So I'm looking forward to it, even if it's going to be scary. I mean, look, if you're not like nervous in a excited way about all of the new issues that are going to pop up in security and all of the things that are going to happen, good and bad, then like security is not the right industry, right?
Yeah, it's a super new interesting stack to work on. Brand new security threats. Like it's not the OWASP top 10 over and over again. There's just whole different types of systems, types of data that we're dealing with. So it is, as a security person who likes challenges, who likes to break things, who likes to fix things, like it is super interesting to work at a time right now where people are just creating new technology all the time. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, it kind of, one of the other things I'll mention is I do feel like the security industry, and maybe it's just because I'm older now, is as a whole less pessimistic about new technology. Like I remember like cloud, how much we fought cloud before we adopted cloud. What are your feelings on that? Do you feel like you think we're just getting older? Or do you think that it's like, do you get that feeling too, that there's like more, not necessarily adoption, but just like more open-mindedness to it? We're critical of things, but I don't think that we're as critical as we used to be.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a good question. I think there is less of the like avoid new technology at all costs mindset. Like I think people realize like, hey, I'm along for the ride as this security person. Like the CTO is going to choose what they want to build with, so I have to be able to secure it. I do think there's a little less of that. I can't think of any recent examples of security people being like, no, don't touch that. We'll never touch that. I don't think that happens as much these days. Maybe we just run in very progressive circles. That's what it is. So.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But yeah, I mean, I like this. I like where we're headed, and feel good about it. So, that's all the ghosts. Anything you wanna leave with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I think to the last point, it's an interesting time in security, interesting time in tech. You know, if you think 2025 is going to be a boring year, I think you're going to be disappointed. So take the holidays to rest up as a security person. You know, take some time to learn some AI, break out ChatGPT, write some code. Definitely sleep as much as possible and have some big dreams. Yeah, 2025 is going to be interesting.
All right, awesome. Well, look, as we reflect on the ghosts of DevSecOps past, present, and future, I'll leave you with this. May your pipelines be smooth and your builds be secure, and may the only logs on fire be the ones in your fireplace. And thanks again, and we'll see you next time.